My name is Adrian Barr-Smith, and I am the chair of British Association for Sport and Law. I practice as a solicitor and as a consultant at the law firm now known as Dentons, which was known by several names in the course of my practicing career. And it started as Denton, Hall and Bergin, and it's now sort of inscribed a fairly full circle and come back so that it's now known just simply as Dentons. I work there in the TMT, Technology, Media and Telecoms department, and for several years I've spearheaded the sports practice there. The principal catalyst for change was the breakup of the duopoly between BBC and ITV on TV rights. Historically, they'd operated as a cartel. They wouldn't bid against each other. So sports rights owners ended up in the situation where they had to go virtually cap in hand to one or other of those broadcasters. I was a copyright lawyer by training, and so broadcasting was something that I had learnt about in the course of training and understanding about copyright. And so the real catalyst for change was the deregulation of the broadcasting market in 1982, so 1 year before I sat down to do my Guinness sponsorship agreement. Channel 4 had come on air. So at that stage, there were then 4 channels. But by the end of the 1980s, there were any number of channels. And sports rights, in particular with the advent of Sky Television, had become a more valuable commodity, and it was possible to monetize them. So I was involved in the late 1980s on behalf of the Football League in negotiations to sell their broadcast rights to British Satellite Broadcasting, who were the proprietors of a thing called the Square Eel. They subsequently didn't succeed in their either in their negotiation with the Football League or with their commercial proposition, and ultimately were subsumed within Sky Television. But that was, if you like, the real catalyst which served to create a market for sports rights and a need for advisors to the people who wanted to sell their rights into that more aggressive and more lucrative sports rights market. Well, very much so. And I'll give you just one concrete example, which is the issue of copyright, owning copyright in footage shot of matches, because that's the basis of any archive collection, and indeed the ability to monetize that archive, whether it's for clips or testimonial pieces or packages about a year in the life of a club or whatever. So historically, the TV company used to come in, bring its cameras in, shoot the footage, leave a check on the table on the way out, and depart with the footage. And that was the last that either the team, the club, or the rights owner would see of that footage. Any archive deals had to be done with the TV company, because they, as the first, as the producers of the recordings, were the owners of the copyright. In 1992, when I started acting for the Premier League, we insisted, acting on my advice, that we would retain that residual copyright, so that we would not only be able to monetize it, but maintain control over the exploitation of the archive and also be able to add value to whoever we sold our rights to, because we could give them access to trailer material or the ability to create historical special programming or indeed anything that they wanted to. So that was a switch, and that, I think, was a significant milestone in the genesis of the sports rights market. And it's just an example of the way that things have developed from a situation where all the cards were held by the broadcaster to one where I think rights owners are much more empowered, at least they are in the principal sports. I'm not sure that there's been the same advance in other sports, such as, by way of example, volleyball or gymnastics. But certainly the major team sports and equally sports like tennis or golf, which are well-funded, that they have come of age and they've really grown their media rights to the extent that they are now. I mean, just by way of comparison, when the Football League sold its rights in 1988, so approximately 25 years ago, it sold the TV rights for all 92 member clubs, there were 92 then, for the sum of £44 million for 4 years to ITV. So it's £11 million a year for a certain number of games to be shown on ITV. What also you have to bear in mind is there was a climate of fear in football at that time, which was, if we put too much on television, nobody will come and watch in the stadium. So they hadn't actually seen broadcast as something that could be an enhancement of the game. They'd seen it as something which derogated from live football. And I have to say that it took some brave programming and indeed argument by the then chief executive of Sky Television, Sam Chisholm, to persuade the league, the Premier League, from whom he bought the rights in 1992, to allow them to do support programming. So you've got highlights programs, Match of the Day, obviously, on BBC continued, but also there was support programming, football specials, and highlights programs, delayed coverage, and all manner of other supportive programming, which hadn't existed before because the principal broadcasters didn't have an incentive to stick that in their schedule. Suddenly, Sky came on stream in particular and said, we've got space in our schedules, you need to give us the content to stick in it. And if you do that, that will enhance your offering. I wish I knew what the future held, because I could perhaps end up as a fairly rich man. I'm not sure that I do. There are several factors in play. The one is, people are forecasting the death of copyright or its, demise at some point in the future. I'm not sure that that's right. I don't think that the creative industries and indeed governments will allow that to happen. I think that there will be an erosion of intellectual property rights, but I don't see their demise. I think that we're in a transitional situation. I mean, digital switchover is only just happening, and indeed some TV markets are more advanced than others. So we're in transition. Clearly, digital television allows a greater fragmentation of the market and of the audience. But clearly, sports rights are something that survives even within that fragmented market as being able to drive a significant number of viewers. So you do get water cooler moments with significant football matches, like the knockout phases of the World Cup, like Ashes victories, like Rugby World Cup knockout phases as well. So they still produce eyeballs. I think the key to, there's no doubt that the market will fragment. That's clear. The audience is fragmenting, and the key, to my mind, is how do you continue to monetize it? Because at the end of the day, that's what counts. You know, even when you've paid as a broadcaster for your rights, you've still got to actually produce the programming. And to film sport is not a cheap day's activity. You know, Test cricket is running at something like £100,000 to £150,000 a day to produce that coverage, depending on how many cameras you employ. Premier League football matches the same or more. And it's all got to be paid for. It's all got to be paid for by the viewing audience. But broadcasters seem to be quite bullish that things will continue. I mean, we've just seen a new round of Premier League licenses. They're going out into the market for their international rights at the moment, and those values continue to hold up. So you have to say that the brands are strong, remain strong, and that broadcasters are showing faith that sport will continue to survive even as the broadcast market continues to fragment. And there's no doubt that it's unlikely that one will get the sort of audience for the World Snooker Championship final that Steve Davis and Dennis Taylor did in their famous match, which finished in the wee small hours, because broadcast television as such doesn't command as many eyeballs in general terms as it used to. Sport somehow seems to hold its place in that, though, notwithstanding that football has, in my view, become probably more dominant vis-a-vis the other sports. So, for example, if you look back maybe 20 years ago, premier sporting event to hit our television screens would always be the Summer Olympic Games. Now I think there's no doubt that the premier value is that generated by the Football World Cup every 4 years. The purchaser of the rights actually trying to maximise the return on that investment. I mean, the silly thing, looking back on it, about the deal which I described in 1988 is that the league was paid to deliver 92 clubs playing a full programme of league matches in the thousands, but only approximately 25 were actually screened in the course of the season. So the rest of it never got filmed, never saw the light of day, and if it was filmed at all, it would be filmed by some local guy standing around with a cine camera, 16mm or 8mm or something. So now what you've got is sophisticated purchasers who, whether they be sponsors, whether they be TV companies, whether they be internet operators, are prepared to actually make sure that they're getting value for any rights payments that they're making. And that has always been the case in the past. People have bought a package and then cherry-picked from that package, whereas actually now I think the feeling is that you want to expose the sport which you are supporting in this way to the maximum possible extent. So, as part of your battle, you want to fight not only for broadcast audience, but also media coverage. You want to be on the inside back page, not 6 pages inside the back page. So, it's good to get the if you're the FA Cup sponsor, you want that sponsorship coverage to be visible not just in the week leading up to the FA Cup final, but when the first round starts back in the autumn. And if you can do that, why not? Yeah. They make much greater demands in general because they're writing bigger checks. I mean, we acted for Qatar Foundation in their mega sponsorship deal of Barca 2 years ago, and the size of the check is eye-watering, but they want more bangs for their buck, and who would have conceived Barcelona taking money for a shirt sponsorship, but they did. There was enough noughts on the check, and as a result, you've got a sponsor which wants, in an appropriate way, to maximise its exposure and its association with the club.